The storm hit long before Amelia Hayes could make out the island on the horizon. Waves thrashed against her small charter boat like walls of liquid steel, each strike tossing the vessel from side to side. Rain slammed against her face, cutting through the layers of her jacket, leaving her teeth chattering uncontrollably. The radar had failed hours ago, leaving her navigating by flashes of lightning that illuminated jagged cliffs and twisted, blackened tree lines. Harren's Isle had been whispered about for years. Abandoned, sealed off, forbidden. But Amelia, investigative journalist and thrill seeker, had never been one to listen to warnings. The anonymous tip she had received months ago kept repeating in her mind. It remembers. It waits for those who come. The boat collided violently with the dock, a jagged structure, half buried in driftwood and rotting timber. Amelia stumbled, barely catching herself on the railing. Her boots sank into a mixture of mud and water, pulling at her feet. The air hit her with a metallic tang, sharp and nauseating, like copper blended with salt and decay. She shivered, forcing herself forward, flashlight clenched in her hand, beam cutting through the sheets of rain. Even through the storm, she could see it. Bodies, scattered along the rocks, and mangled planks. Some were missing limbs. Others slumped in positions of unnatural rigidity. Faces twisted into expressions of shock and terror. She had to look away, yet she couldn't. The remnants were too human, too tragic, too real. Somewhere nearby, a scream ripped through the air, high-pitched and agonizing, carried by the wind. She knew instinctively it was no echo of the storm. Someone or something was screaming. Amelia ran. She moved through the debris, boots sliding in mud mixed with blood, the coppery scent thickening with every step. Branches clawed at her arms and face, shredding her jacket and cutting small lines into her skin. The flashlight beam caught glints of dark, congealed substance, smeared along tree trunks and stones. Sticky, thick, and glistening under the intermittent lightning. Imagination screamed possibilities. A researcher who hadn't survived, torn by the island's unknown inhabitants perhaps, or maybe something far worse. Every nerve in her body screamed to turn back, but she didn't. She couldn't. The tip, the story, her obsession. They drove her forward. Ahead, the research facility rose from the forest, like a corpse frozen in time. Blackened and crumbling walls stretched upward, windows shattered, metal siding hanging in jagged strips. The roar of the storm outside was almost comforting compared to the unnatural stillness inside. Amelia pushed open the doors, and the smell hit her. Damp rot mingled with something far more sinister, metallic and sickening. She shone her flashlight across the floor. Broken glass, muddy puddles mixed with sticky residue, scattered papers soaked and smeared with something dark. Footprints, some huge, others impossibly small, pressed into the mud and liquid, tracking inward. She froze as movement caught her peripheral vision. In a corner crouched a figure, hunched and shivering, soaked in water and a dark substance. Its eyes darted, wide with terror, unblinking and hollow. The voice came in a whisper, almost drowned by the storm. They hear you. The island, it feeds, it watches. The hairs on her arms rose. Her flashlight flickered, casting long shadows that twisted unnaturally along the walls. One of the shadows stretched, contorted, and jerked violently, forming shapes no human body could achieve. Amelia stumbled backward as the floor beneath her seemed to hum, vibrating faintly in rhythm with her heartbeat. Panic surged. Her mind fought against disbelief, against terror, against what she knew had to be impossible. The facility, the island itself, was alive. Another scream tore through the hall, closer now, sharp and jagged. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting as if inhaling her fear. Amelia pressed herself against a wall, trying to orient herself. The hallway twisted before her eyes. Doors that should have been behind her seemed to stretch and reform into new positions. A flicker of movement drew her gaze to a lab chamber where tanks lined the walls. Some still contained liquids that glimmered with an unnatural blue glow, while others were shattered, spilling dark, viscous fluid across the floor. In one, strands of red floated in the liquid, twitching subtly, something alive, she realized, trapped or left behind. The whispers began then, overlapping voices that seemed to emerge from the walls, floor, and ceiling at once. "Amelia, come back. Leave. Stay." Some were begging, some screaming, some laughing in a tone that churned her stomach. Her teeth chattered as a low vibration resonated inside her chest. She stumbled forward, forcing herself past a fallen beam. A handprint caught her flashlight beam. Pale against the mud, smeared with dark substance, fingers stretched as if clawing for something to hold onto. She imagined the owner, the struggle, the terror that must have preceded this mark. Every step was a risk. A sound behind her, wet, dragging, almost like flesh being torn, made her heart leap into her throat. She spun, flashlight swinging, but the shadows were empty. Or maybe they weren't. The air was thick with unseen presence. Something moved just out of sight, leaving behind traces of slick, red-streaked fluid on the floor and walls. The island itself was testing her, learning her patterns, feeding her fear. She stumbled into a stairwell leading upward. Broken metal railings threatened to collapse with each step. The walls were covered in deep gouges, as if someone, or something, had tried to claw its way out of the structure. She shone her light across them. The scratches were jagged, fresh in appearance, and the smell of iron thickened in the air. The scream had multiplied, now layered into dozens of voices, echoing and overlapping, disorienting her. Reaching a partially collapsed floor, Amelia found a room with a sealed console and scattered charts. The recorder on the desk clicked on spontaneously. A distorted voice hissed through the static. Subject response accelerated. Auditory resonance. Consciousness affected. The island adapts. The meaning hit her. The island wasn't merely haunted. It was conscious, intelligent, and alive. It was aware of her. She felt its attention crawl inside her skull, probing, testing, taunting. Lightning flashed, illuminating a corner of the room. A twisted form moved there. Half human, half something else. Limbs bent unnaturally. It lurched toward her, then retreated, leaving behind dark streaks on the floor, wet and sticky. Amelia gagged but didn't stop. She had to keep moving. She forced herself down a hallway, slick with a mixture of mud and blood, past broken tanks, overturned desks, and scattered body remnants that made her stomach twist. Each whisper seemed to burrow into her mind. Leave. Become. Stay. She stumbled upon a shattered window, looking out over the forest. Lightning lit the twisted tree line, shadows moving within shadows. The scream outside, the one that had haunted her from the dock, had grown closer, deeper, filled with layers of sound that were not entirely human. She realized the island was alive in every sense, its consciousness feeding on everything that entered. Fear, blood, and attention alike. Amelia's breath came in short, ragged gasps as she pressed forward. Ahead, a faint light, the lighthouse, cut through the storm. It was her only hope, her only anchor. But she knew even then that the island would not let her go easily. Every shadow, every dripping smear, every whispered name was a reminder. Harren's Isle had already begun to mark her. And then a scream, closer than ever, erupted from the hallway behind her, accompanied by a dragging wet sound that made her stomach churn. She knew she couldn't look back. The storm, the darkness, and the whispering shadows were all around her now, alive, patient, hungry. She ran. Amelia plunged into the storm-lashed forest. Every step through mud and tangled roots, a battle against the island itself. The screeches followed her, now layered. High-pitched cries, low guttural growls, and whispers that sounded like hundreds of voices in her head at once. The rain was relentless, soaking through her clothes, but she barely felt it. Adrenaline coursed through her veins as she pushed forward, heart hammering like a drum in her chest. Branches tore at her arms, leaving shallow gashes that bled into the mud. But she didn't stop. Glimpses of movement in the corner of her vision made her stumble more than once. A figure, or something that had once been human, lurched from behind a fallen tree. Its body was twisted, limbs bent at impossible angles, eyes hollow and fixed on her. It didn't chase, not exactly, but its presence made the air itself heavy and oppressive. She ducked under a fallen branch, boots slipping in a slick mixture of rain and the dark. Congealed substance smeared across the forest floor. She pushed forward, trying to keep the lighthouse in sight, but the forest seemed to close around her. Every tree bent as if alive, shadows twisting into grotesque shapes. Somewhere nearby, a corpse half buried in mud twitched. Its hand, missing several fingers, clawed at the air as if trying to grab her. The stench of iron and decay was overpowering. Amelia gagged, but forced herself to keep moving. She could feel the island watching, studying her, savoring her fear. A scream erupted directly behind her. She whirled around, flashlight swinging wildly. The figure that emerged was impossibly tall, its limbs elongated, flesh glistening in the rain as if wet with something that wasn't quite water. It lunged, leaving streaks of dark fluid across the ground, but vanished before she could get a clear look. The scream continued, echoing off the trees and reverberating inside her skull, making her vision swim. She ran blindly, slipping in mud, her hands cutting into the ground to keep from falling. Another body appeared in her path, partially buried, face pressed into the mud, mouth frozen in a silent scream. Amelia's flashlight beam caught something even more horrifying. A deep gouge across the chest, ragged and uneven, fresh. Something, or someone, had attacked this person, leaving behind evidence that made her stomach churn. She swallowed bile and ran on. The lighthouse loomed closer. Its red beacon flickered faintly through the storm. Relief surged, but it was short-lived. The scream intensified. Voices whispered her name from every direction, layered and indistinguishable. Amelia pressed forward, feeling the air vibrate with unnatural resonance. Branches tore at her jacket, and she caught sight of another figure. Skeletal, wet, dragging itself across the ground, leaving behind a streak of blood that looked almost alive. The path narrowed, cliffs rising sharply on either side. The sound of waves crashing against the rocks far below, mixed with low, wet thuds that she couldn't identify. Something moved in the corner of her eye, something large, undulating, leaving behind trails of dark, sticky fluid. Her flashlight beam trembled as she caught glimpses of teeth glinting in the dim light. Something humanoid, yet monstrous, always just at the edge of visibility. She stumbled onto the cliffside, rain hammering her back. One misstep could send her tumbling into the frothing surf below. Every step was an act of sheer will, but the adrenaline pushed her forward. The lighthouse door groaned as she shoved it open, the hinges strained and threatening to give way. Inside, the spiral staircase rose, slick with rainwater that had poured in from shattered windows and streaked with dark fluids. The walls bore scratches and gouges, deep enough to reveal the bare metal beneath. As she climbed, the voices followed. She could feel them crawling along the walls, pressing at her mind. The shadows twisted unnaturally, forming human faces contorted in agony, frozen mid-scream. Some pressed against the walls, as if attempting to reach her, leaving dark streaks in their wake. She swallowed hard, trying to focus on the steps ahead. Each breath felt like it could be her last. Each step carried the weight of 1,000 eyes, watching. When she reached the observation deck, the storm had reached its apex. Lightning illuminated the cliffs and forest below, showing glimpses of bodies suspended in the rain, tangled in branches, hands clawing at mud and earth. The air reeked of iron and decay. She staggered to the radio, fingers shaking as she pressed the buttons. "Mayday! Harren's Isle. Anyone, please!" she shouted. Static answered. Then, through the crackle, a voice. "Amelia, leave it. Alone." The voice was layered, distorted, and almost inside her mind. She froze. Every shadow moved in the corner of her vision. Shapes emerged, human and yet grotesquely distorted. Faces contorted in eternal screaming. One pressed against her shoulder. Wet, cold, sticky. Whispering her name in a chorus of overlapping voices. The scream rose to a crescendo. The walls of the observation deck vibrated in tune with the sound, seeming to breathe, pulsating. Amelia realized the island had fully engaged her mind. Its awareness pressed into her skull, twisting perceptions, altering reality. Her own reflection in a puddle shifted, showing a face not her own. Hollow eyes, mouth open in silent terror. She staggered back, heart hammering. Lightning struck the railing, illuminating the horror around her. From the shadows, something moved. A mass of writhing forms, partially human, partially monstrous. They collided and merged, wet, sticky, streaks of blood and dark fluid trailing in their wake. Amelia's scream joined the chorus, but it was swallowed by the storm and the unholy chorus of the island. Every instinct told her to flee, but there was nowhere to run. The staircase behind her had collapsed during the storm. The observation deck was her only vantage point, her only anchor. Her mind spun. She pressed herself against the railing, eyes darting, flashlight beam trembling. Shapes pressed against the windows from outside, hands leaving dark streaks across the glass. Faces staring at her from every angle. The screams, the whispers, the wet metallic smell, and the pulsing vibration inside her chest merged into one overwhelming sensation. She could feel the island integrating everything it had claimed. Bodies, identities, fears. And now, her very essence was at risk. Lightning illuminated a path along the cliffs. Instinct, raw and primal, surged. She bolted, leaping through the shattered door onto the slick rocks outside. Mud and blood coated her boots, and the air carried the wet, coppery scent of the fallen. Shadows shifted, following, pressing at her from the corners of vision. Trees bent unnaturally, branches twisting like skeletal fingers, scraping at her arms. She barely registered the pain, running blindly, heart hammering. By dawn, the storm had passed. The forest seemed deceptively still, though the scent of iron lingered, and a faint hum reverberated in the ground beneath her feet. Amelia staggered down the cliff path, soaked, bleeding, exhausted, but alive. The boat was gone, smashed into driftwood and rocks. She carried only the recorder, capturing the echoes, the whispers, the screams of Harren's Isle. Somewhere, deep in the mist, a voice called her name. She froze, heart racing. Her reflection in a puddle shimmered, not her own face, but the hollow screaming visage of someone the island had claimed. Amelia turned and ran, slipping into the dense forest, shadows swallowing her as the island waited behind, patient, hungry, remembering, and if anyone listened closely, even now, they might hear it. The scream.
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.